It's funny to see how far everything has come in the exotic industry.
They just got a group of us high school kids to go down there and wrestle these animals, and they were chasing them with Jeeps and pushing them into corrals and kept getting smaller and smaller. And so we just went in there and just got thrashed, basically. It was a eye-opening experience. That was the first time I handled, I think, exotics.
All that had to happen for this concept to come around to be able to trap animals with their phone now.
I didn't invent any of this stuff, you know. They had traps. Somebody was doing it with a camera system for sure back in the day, but it wasn't as easy now as like I'm getting an alert on my phone and I just hit drop the gate and it drops.
Yeah.
A lot of guys think it's super easy and they're like, oh, we'll just catch all 20 of those animals. A lot of them are going to be dead because you don't know. So there's a lot of things that go into. You can't just buy a trap and start dropping the gate and it all works. Any of these animals could hurt you or kill you potentially.
Yeah, it's all fun and games until it isn't.
Plan for the worst, hope for the best.
Before we get into today's episode, we'd really appreciate it if you take a second to like, subscribe, and share the podcast. Right now, only about 40% of the viewers are subscribed, and it's completely free. Every bit of support helps us continue bringing on great guests, sharing important conversations, and educating more people about this industry. Now, let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Today, I've got one of my good friends, Joseph from Exotic Game Control. Today, we're going to be talking about traps, trailers, and the exotic industry in general. Joseph, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, we've been friends now for a while, and I'm really excited because we've talked a lot just in general about your business and your family and everything else, but I'm excited to kind of dive deeper into this. And so can you kind of just inform the listeners about what all businesses do you have or what falls under the EGC umbrella?
Sure. Exotic Game Control was what we first started with, and everything was underneath it initially. And then accountants said, hey, we need to separate, the animal sales, or when we started doing trailer sales, from the traps and cameras. So we formed EGC Trailers to help with calico sales when we first did that, and then now the Big Ben trailers, and then WH Exotics, because we did capture animals and sell them, and so she wanted them all separate. So now we have 3 entities that I run, and that's how we run everything like that.
Yeah, so I guess starting, what was the first one that started it? So you said Exotic Game Control.
Yes.
So what all does Exotic Game Control do or cover?
Well, now it's just the traps and the camera cells. So we build them there in Utopia. We have over 600 cameras out now in the field for about the last 9 years. So everything to do with the traps and cameras, whether somebody's adding on to their already existing trap or turnkey wanted a new trap, that's what Exotic Game Control does.
Yeah. So what originally, we talked a little bit off camera before we started, but what originally got you into the exotic industry?
Well, growing up in Utopia, I've lived there my whole life. So that's kind of in a hub. You have a lot of big ranches right there. And so it just kind of fell into place. But in 2000, I started working with a neighboring ranch on their whitetail operations. So they needed help in October-ish, somewhere in there, to go wean whitetail, wean fawns, separate everything, cut antlers. And so we started doing that in 2000, probably till 2008, somewhere in that. And just every year just would go in and help them. But it was a eye-opening experience because the first time we went in there, the whitetail wouldn't come out of the pins. There were square pins into a 16-foot alleyway. And so when we finally got them out of the pins, and start pushing them down to the facility, it was a crude facility, but it did work. And then we're, getting them down there. There was no cut gates. So it was just like the back pin to the facility was, hundreds of feet, and they'd come running back on you. And so we kind of helped them get that revamped, after the first time we went through there and did that, made some cut gates and changed some things here and there and made it work a lot better, which therefore in turn, helped me go to the next spot in working animals. Listen to the biologist and the vets, that's how I learned about animal husbandry and, picking up little tricks and tips and stuff like that from people. So, but actually in 2003, when I was 18, we prepped black buck and mouflon to go to the YO. which is funny because now I'm a vendor at the YO, but back then I didn't really know what the YO was. So they just got a group of us high school kids to go down there and wrestle these animals. And they were chasing them with Jeeps and pushing them into corrals and kept getting smaller and smaller. And then they did have barns with stalls in them. And so we just went in there and just got thrashed, basically. So it was a eye-opening experience. That was the first time I handled, I think, exotics.
Yeah.
So, but
yeah, it's funny to see how far everything has come in the exotic industry.
Yeah, 23 years ago. And I mean, it did work, and we taped them, and they took them to the YO, and everything was good. But it's funny, about that same time, I guess, we probably didn't get paid that much, but it was more fun and, bragging rights of that. But I was dating my now wife at that time, and they had a place below town called the Green Place, and there was a little group of black buck that went from, through that place into the neighbors and all that. And so I was going to rig up a trap to catch them. Had no idea, saw a few things. And I look back now, I'm like, that wouldn't have worked. Even if they would have gotten in there, they would have killed themselves in the open wire. And I had some shade cloth on there and had like a little, I think it was like a pig where they'd push through or something. It was a crawl in the fence is what I was trying to catch them at. And so a local guy that was a seasoned veteran trapper, he saw that little trap and he's like, oh, he's trying to get those black bucks. So he contacts the neighbor and then calls another guy that had all the trapping equipment, everything. They had a helicopter come and catch literally every black buck. So like crushed my dream of, making money off these animals. So it's funny because later in life at one of these other ranches, he was the one dropping animals off. And I didn't know this until we started working together, catching exotics and helping him out on his operation to where, I knew he went in there and caught all those animals I was trying to catch back in 2003. So it was kind of funny.
Yeah. It's funny how, again, big but small this industry is, but full circle coming back 23 years later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So in 2006, I went full time for that ranch as a manager. And so basically regular ranching operations, filling feeders and stuff, but it was a hunting operation. We did my dad and I did a big lodge for them. So, but daily in the whitetails. So, just getting fed from the biologist and the vets that were there about what to do, what to feed and problems and stuff like that. And then we still work those animals every year. And so that's where I gained a lot of knowledge on general stuff for mostly whitetail, but transitioned kind of into the exotics because they did drop off animals. So the fact somebody was catching them somewhere and kicking them out there and we were hunting them, that played part into to it. But in 2008, he sold it. And so didn't have a house, didn't have a truck, didn't have a job. So luckily, one of the guys that came and looked at the ranch hired me to go to his ranch, which was clean slate. So they saw the facility and the lodge and everything. So we did a big house for them and built their deer pens from scratch. So it was like 1 acre pens that were pie shaped down to a home plate center area. And so I'm hitting all this stuff because it makes sense to how our traps work, now. Right. So, and we even had some cool little things. I didn't design it per se, but I learned from the vet or biologist or whoever we were working with. We had slam latches. So like we pull a rope and shut gates down there as the deer were running down the main alleyway. And then they turned, got into a rotunda, went into the deer barn, and they could sit there and watch it from Houston or wherever the owners were at. So it's kind of cool to see that at that operation,
right?
To help, stick all that knowledge in my head, basically.
Yeah.
So, and at that place, I think it was about 20. So I did that about 2 years, basically. So we had too many aoudad on the back part of the ranch. So the same guy that was dropping animals off at the first ranch and the second ranch and caught all my black buck I was trying to catch, and called him, still didn't know he caught all those black buck till I bet it's 10 years after that, And so he brought a drop net because there was no traps in 2010 that I saw. And so set up the drop net. And of course, I was there helping him and another guy. And so set it off, caught, 30 or 40 aoudad and wrestled them all on the trailer, got them all loaded. And he said, "Hey man, I appreciate that." And he handed me $100. And that's kind of when the light bulb, kind of turned on in my head. I was like, I don't remember what I was making back then, but $100 was pretty good. I mean, still good right now, but I was like, man, it's like an hour of work and I'm already get paid by the ranch and I made an extra $100, So that led me into, hey, what else? Somebody else got something to catch over here? And so we did. So we went to another neighbor's place and dropped a net on some aoudad. And then he had a crude trap. So it was plywood on a square tubing frame, I think one drop gate and a simple alleyway. But to catch the animals, I would have to watch a game camera for a week or so to pattern the animals, which it was still aoudad we were catching. And then I'd go there, if they were showing up at 7 to the feeder, then I'd go there at 6 and plug in this box to it and then get back in the brush with binoculars and sit and wait because there were no cameras on any of that stuff. And people dropping nets, you were sitting there watching it and clicking the button. So, and then they would come in and I'd wait till the load was good. And sometimes you just waited till they all left and because it wasn't a good load. But then I'd click the button, the gates would drop, and then I'd call him. I didn't have a trailer. I didn't have a trap. I was just, I'm still managing at that ranch. So that led me to go, we kept running that. And so basically every time I did, brought a bigger job to the table, I was just holding that money from that first $100 because I was making my money. It was like a side hustle. I was making my money managing the ranches and we were doing home construction and stuff like that in between some of those. And then it got to where we needed to trap, way off. And so he found a company that it was Cellgate, that did camera systems for hog traps is what they were marketing it as. So I had all that money rat hold, which is a couple grand, and bought the camera. Played with it, and it would just take still pictures, and had a lot of failed attempts to make it work, to drop the gates. So drive all the way out to the place. It worked there, but then something hung up and everything. Well, then when it finally started working, we were just slamming them, catching tons of animals. And I was a partner in that job. So I was making pretty good money as a side hustle.
Yeah. Protect your investment, preserve your records, promote responsible wildlife management. The Exotic Wildlife Association Animal Registry is working in conjunction with the Veterinary Genetics Lab at UC Davis. This provides secure, professional record keeping for the exotic wildlife owners and breeders across the country. From documenting pedigrees to ownership to promoting herd management and conservation goals. The EWA Registry is a trusted resource for our industry. Whether you own one animal or manage an entire ranch, the EWA Animal Registry is here to help. Learn more today at myewa.org. That's myewa.org. Spring Creek Outdoors is an all-inclusive habitat and wildlife management company that works with landowners in every ecoregion of Texas. Their biologists have over 55 years of combined experience improving the furred, feathered, and finned resources that have you driving to the ranch each weekend. Macy Ledbetter and the team at Spring Creek Outdoors will save you time, money, and gray hair, and they will help your property maximize its full potential. They may be found on Facebook and on the gram or at springcreekoutdoors.com.
Yeah, I think it's funny about how far things have come. I mean, in 20 years is a relatively short amount of time, but just the aspect of sitting in the bush, waiting on them. And then trail cameras back then didn't send to your phone.
No.
So you had to go pick the camera up, bring it back, put it into a computer or whatever you were looking at them on, review them, mark timestamps, come back, and then do it. And the way I tie it into is all that had to go into place now to say, not that you're the only one building traps, but all that had to happen for this concept to come around to be able to trap animals with their phone now.
Sure. And that's why a lot of people back in those days would do a helicopter because, you're paying the crew to be there and the trailers and everything. And it was almost guaranteed you're going to catch something. And so I'm sure there was other people and the viewers out there, the haters, and don't leave ugly comments. I didn't invent any of this stuff. We didn't invent or make it our own. But yeah, they had traps. Somebody was doing it with a camera system. for sure back in the day, but
Yeah.
it wasn't as easy now as like I'm getting an alert on my phone and I just hit drop the gate and it drops.
Yeah.
It was probably a week or two or more process whenever I was, watching a trap.
Mm-hmm.
And nets, if you didn't get paid if you didn't drop the net, because he didn't make any money. So you're just sitting there, talking and BSing with the guys, and not enough deer showed up, or the 5 caps didn't go off, correctly and didn't catch any animals. So,
Right.
I mean, that still happens in today's traps. Something's going to go wrong, but
Yeah.
way easier than it was back then. But that, I think in 2014 was when I bought that camera from Cellgate. So I think there were a few people, doing that, but I'm not going to say I was the first by any means, but
Right.
it was not like you didn't see them on every ranch, the traps. So, but we did that for a couple of jobs where, it was his trap, my camera. I think it was his trailer too. So made that money as that side hustle. And then I got my own trailer. And then in 2015, I built my first trap, which was very crude, but it worked, Then I think in selling the animals, ran across somebody that had some animals that need to be caught. So then I branched off on my own and, started catching aoudad, really. That's what it started on. And caught those. And then I think I ran 2 traps with Cellgate cameras for several years. We were doing high-end home construction with my dad. And so I would just, after work, go, 10 black buck here or whatever and catch animals here and there. But then sometime around 2017 is when, well, I guess I was also a dealer for Cellgate. So the reason why I even looked at not using their cameras because I couldn't keep them working, no hard feelings against Cellgate, are the ones who started all this. But I was selling them. I was selling traps and cameras to other clients. So, but they were Cellgate cameras. And so anyway, it was a still picture. So you would request a picture, it would take it and then send it back to you. And sometimes it was 15 seconds, sometimes it was 45 seconds. And you're like, oh, there's the load, drop it, then go back, request a picture, wait for it to come through. And you have 2 axis in the trap.
Yeah. When you had 10 or 12 before.
Yeah. And you're like, crap, this ain't going to work,
Yeah.
We need something a little bit better. So in 2017, I worked with a guy and in a company and built a live video camera. So that was the first time we did our little EGC cameras.
Yeah.
And it was a game changer.
I was going to say, we see those. I would compare it how earlier you said you didn't see them on every ranch, but like now I feel like almost everyone that we work with, I'm sure some camera systems and things get switched out between different builders and whatever, but almost anyone that someone sends me a picture of that they're excited about, like, got this one in the trap, he'll be in my ranch soon. It's got the little EGC icon at the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a bunch out there. And I guess at some point in time, there's going to be a trap and a camera at every high fence operation.
Right.
Well, not just high fence, low fence too.
For sure.
So many free range animals out there. So
yeah. Well, I was going to say most of the high fence animals were at one point low fence animals.
Yeah, exactly. They're just going back and forth.
Right.
As soon as the flood happens. So, yeah, that basically, I never intended to sell these, the cameras. I was just making them for me to go, because I was just going to trap animals, I said, hey, you can make pretty good money just trapping animals, selling them. And then when you sold these animals to this guy in his high fence, in a couple of years, he needed you to come trap them again and move them, because he has too many of them.
Right.
So that was my goal. And then a buddy was like, hey, what's that, live video? And so then I sold one to him. And so then I was just, just me welding up when I had time, welding a trap together in my dad's shop. And I didn't have a shop, and selling them. And it was okay. Not very many of them, it was really slow at first, but I didn't really care because I just wanted to be able to have, 10 traps, and I had 10 different ranches that I worked with or whatever. And then that's how I would make my money,
Yeah.
But in sometime around 2019, I had my first 40-acre high fence pen that we built, and I was on a pretty good catch job and a big clean out job basically. And then I think we put Markhor and Trench Caspian Urials in there. And so I've been breeding them since 2019. And I think in 2020 built an actual deer barn, like a 60 by 80, I think it is, and has a catwalk. And, elevated from my first deer barn was like an old goat shed that we went in there and screwed some lumber from some like forms, concrete forms, because I didn't have all that money to go build all this stuff. So it was pretty crude, but it did hold them. And we ran quite a few animals in there. But in 2020, built an actual nice deer barn. It was safe and,
Yeah, it's really nice, actually.
Yeah. And you can, hold a rank animal and don't worry about getting killed behind the gate and stuff like that. So, but then in 21, I'm kind of going on my timeline for EGC trailers, exotic game control, and WH.
Absolutely.
And then we can kind of go back and
hit
on this a little bit more. But in 21 is when, I guess I got to go back on my timeline. So I had sold Calico trailers. I don't remember when the first one was. That was the main kind of trailer that most everybody used. And they were good. They were set up well. I'm sure people had educated them on how deep to make the cuts and to put this vent here and all that, what kind of hinges to use and all that. So they were one of the staples of it. Eagle bodies were real pricey and took a long time to build, basically. You had to order it. So Calicos were what a lot of people ran. But they wouldn't hold up to the abuse that these guys were putting on it. Some guys putting 100,000 plus miles on their truck, running animals. Because I guess it wasn't, back in the day, they weren't running as hard maybe as guys now are, like as far as trafficking the animals around.
Right.
And so Calicos just needed a little better option. So I ran into the owner of Big Ben Trailers. They had a good reputation for solid, good featured cattle trailers. And so that's when I started working with them. I had built some homemade trailers, like people are just getting an old stock trailer and put bifolds or swing slides in there and kind of make it like that. So I had ideas of what I wanted in a trailer. So worked with them, and that was a pretty good chore to get the first ones in and make sure it was all right and make changes to it and get it back because they were made in Mexico. And but now we have 110 of them that are out running around. You see them quite a bit. And solid, good trailers. I love mine. And so we have other things for Big Ben trailers we're working with. But in 21 is when that started. And then jumping to WH Exotics in 23 is when we did like a 300 acre high fence pen that we started throwing animals in to breed and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the timeline, 23 years, 26, but of what kind of started and the ideas to get to where we are now.
Yeah.
So
it's crazy you're able to break that down in 10 minutes versus 26 years, and all the sub points and small stories in between that we'll hopefully dive into. But it's crazy to see what a thought of doing just some day labor led into an idea that led into a thought that led into a business. It's really cool to see how all this kind of ties together.
I thought it was going to be a side hustle, just catching animals here and there. And, my dad and I were building high-end custom homes or doing general contracting, ranch work and stuff like that. But at some point, I don't know exactly when it would have been, I guess in 2019, probably I would have said, okay, we're kind of done with the houses and the homes and everything. And that's when I went strictly going to live off, support my family with exotic game control. Because that was the only company that I had then.
Right.
So in 2019, we just said, well, let's make the plunge. No guaranteed, monthly salary money coming in for that. And luckily it paid off because you were able to, put a lot of effort into it and grow it. There wasn't a really a big cap on that.
Yeah, no doubt. So kind of going in, we'll break up each category. We'll start with exotic game control. But luckily, some of the viewers that we get are, I don't want to say uneducated. They just don't know. So when I say uneducated, I don't mean that in a poor manner. So if you're listening,
not experienced, maybe.
And so if people don't know when we're referring to traps, can you kind of give the layman's terms of what that looks like, what it is, and what it's used for?
Sure. Yeah. So a trap, could be a permanent, pin that someone has. But the traps usually everyone's used to is the square tube and frame, plastic, HDPE plastic on it. And basically there can be in 48 to 60 foot or as big as you want it. And we're spoiled now because we have solar powered camera units that send you feed right to your phone and give you alerts, and then alleyways built into it, however the guy wants to rig it up, and portable, so you can be at a job and catch 20, 30 animals and tear it down and take it to another job, and it's all solar powered and relatively safe, and that's what most people's traps consist of, is the portable black walled or curtain style traps is what people call it.
Right. And then you have the EGC app because can you live stream from it, or is it so you can live stream, you can record video, you can drop your trap walls or the curtain walls in there?
Sure. Yeah. We had to get our own app built whenever we did our camera system, because it was pretty crude. You had to go between 2 pages and, initially drop the relay over here, but now it's all merged into one app. And so, you get alerts. You got a camera roll. You can watch it live, and then you pick when to drop the gate and when to not. And then they're just kind of chilling until you go load them up in the alleyway.
Yeah. So what are some of the biggest developments you've seen from building your first trap under a hog wash, essentially under to today?
Yeah, I mean, it's changed a bunch. On the first trap, I mean, it was just an 8x12 panel, and where that came up with, I don't know. Somebody made it. I don't know if that's identical, like ideal or whatever, but 8x12 is what most of the panels are, and we just wired them together. We went through a ton of changes because with home construction, we used to do prefab metal buildings too, so I was always into building and doing things to make a better mousetrap per se. So we used drop pins, and I didn't really like them. The wind would blow them, and there wasn't a good way to anchor everything. And so we had looking back at pictures, a ton of odd things. I'm like, why would that have worked? We only had one drop gate on it. So instead of putting multiple drop gates like we do now, I had like a 2-foot window out of the bottom of a panel. I cut the plastic out and put cattle panel on it. So the deer would go up, and I had 2 of them. So they would like look and see daylight and think that was a way to get out. And of course, all they did was smash their face on it, whenever we went to run them in the alleyway, but trial and error. So
right.
We had giant guillotine doors that just slid straight down, never killed an animal, but scary, hard to put up. Now everyone runs a curtain gate, which is light and easy and holds most every animal in it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, just the changes we saw in working through those is what led us to what we build now.
Yeah. And with that, we're kind of talking off camera, what are some of the animals that do well when they're in a trap? Like when you drop the curtain gates, and because everything gets a little scared, right? Like just imagine being in a room and someone just slams the door shut. You'd probably look around and be like, what the heck just happened?
Sure.
So same thing with the animals, but certain animals react a little different when they're in a closed quarters like that. So what works well, and what animals are not so keen to being trapped in there?
Sure. The only animal I've seen go through one of our curtain gates is an eland bull. So especially single male animals don't do well trapped by themselves. An eland bull will run right into a trailer if he's with a cow or two for some reason. Most of the horned animals that are aggressive, so your Gemsbok, sable, scimitar aren't that bad, but those are pretty scary to get pushed in if you don't know what you're doing. And but even going down to black buck, I mean, they have really sharp hooves and they bounce around like popcorn. Once you drop the gate, they're just popping everywhere. There's no rhyme or reason. They don't push well, and so I mean, those can even just hit you and jab you with a horn or something like that. So
right.
There are certain animals that I don't know if anyone's ever trapped in there, high value animals, basically.
Yeah.
But I do know some people have caught, like, say, sable cows. They're pretty valuable right now. So they'll catch them and dart them. And so because their ranch may have ravines or really thick spots that the animal would go run into and you can't find it. So they're utilizing the trap to kind of just keep them in a spot. So they may only catch 1 or 2, not catching all 10 of them that they're going to sell, but they're using them like that. So even though they're not run live through the alleyway, they're still just being caught in the trap. But,
right.
But yeah, the bigger animals, scary ones, the eland, wildebeest can get pretty rank in a trap. The ones that are going to turn and fight you. That's
right.
the ones you don't want to, or you want to have a shield or know what you're doing or have a good plan when you're going in to work those animals.
Right.
But even going down to an axis deer, a 2-year-old axis bug, he stabs you with that horn, then that's not going to be good. So,
yeah, it's all fun and games until it isn't.
Yeah, exactly. Plan for the worst.
Yeah.
Hope for the best.
Yeah, because that's another one thing that I wanted to ask is like, what are some of the common misconceptions that either landowners or people who are buying your traps have with them?
A lot of landowners go buy a trap or in a trailer and they say, I'm just going to do it myself. Well, I do make sure they understand, look, any of these animals could hurt you or kill you potentially,
right.
So be very cautious that percentage you're giving up to the catcher, is that worth it for you to go do it yourself, or you're not in the best health or something like that. So I'll sell them whatever they want, but hey, let's think about this and make sure that you're committed to doing this. And some just want the control of it. So they drop when they pick when they're going to drop the gate, and then they call whoever the guy is going to come load them and actually sell them. So a lot of guys think it's super easy, and just to make sure they understand everything that goes about it, and they're like, oh, we'll just catch all 20 of those animals. Well, a lot of them are going to be dead because you don't know. So there's a lot of things that go into. You can't just buy a trap and start dropping the gate and it all works, temperature, a lot of factors in there, multi-species being in there, or hard antlers with does and velvets and stuff like that. So you got to look at all those different things,
Right.
If you were going to take it to wildlife buyer and you dropped it on Saturday evening, well, then what do you do with them? You can leave them in the trap or leave them in the trailer because they're not open on Sunday. That there's all those aspects of when you go to catch an animal, not just, oh, I caught it, it's done. Who's going to buy it? Where's it going? So the landowners don't think that all through initially.
Yeah, because the best part about anyone doing their job correctly is if they make it look easy, it means they had a lot of uh-ohs along the way to make it look easy.
Yeah, we've been messing with that since 2000, trying to perfect this thing. And the reel that Droptine Studios made us makes it looks really easy, but yet, no, it takes a lot of work and know-how.
And then the other part that I wanted to ask is, like, when a ranch owner calls Exotic Game Controls, what are they normally needing help with?
They have too many animals, basically, or they want to generate income. So they're going to, instead of relying on someone to catch their own animals, they just want that control over doing it themselves.
Right.
So,
go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, and that ties into, we'll kind of jump around here a little bit, but like, you are now kind of the one-stop shop as well. So like, if they want to catch it themselves, you can sell them the trap and the camera and the subscription and everything, and they can do it on their own. And then once they do about 4 or 5 of those and they suck at it, then they can call WH Exotics and you can go capture them and relocate them for the ranch owners.
Yeah, I do have clients that bought the trap, and instead of me bringing my own trap to do it, but they don't load them. We coordinate, what days I'm available, what's going on, when the animals are going to show up. It gets a little difficult because I'm not available every day, and or they aren't available, or the animals aren't in the trap. But yeah, basically anything they want to do, they want to buy it, and I get the animals out, or somebody else does, or we bring our trap and trap the animals, and do it that way.
Yeah, I even had someone call me the other day that they had a trap, and they were like, "Hey, we're catching, these 20 animals over this period of time." But he's like, "I'm not moving them." He's like, I bought the trap, and then it has the load-in gates and everything else. But he's like, I'm not getting in there. I'm not going to go load them. He's like, who should I bring out to do this? And I was asking where he's at and who'd be convenient and whatever. But I do think it's a nice tool for ranch owners to have for the freedom. But yeah, let the people, if you don't have someone on your ranch doing it all, like, just, to me, it's like changing the oil in my truck. Like, could do it, don't want to do it, prefer not to do it.
Yeah.
But letting someone else just do it with that's their job. It's
not worth getting someone hurt over capturing that animal because you wanted to save whatever percentage or per head price somebody's, charging you to do that.
Right.
Because it is a dangerous, occupation. Well,
yeah, especially I think I've told the story before, but we were little animals that you wouldn't expect, right? Like you see a Gemsbach in a trailer or just in general, you're like, yeah, that thing could hurt me. Well, I was guiding hunts one time and a little spike whitetail buck jumped into the fence and his nubs got caught. And the guys were laughing so hard because I was out trying to get it that they wouldn't help. And when I went to pick him up, he just kicked me right in my chest, ripped my shirt open, cut me all down. They're like, man, that little buck did that thing. And I was like, have you ever touched one of those hoofs? Like, no. I was like, they are razor sharp.
Exactly.
And I was like, that little 90-pound yearling buck or whatever, I was like, he is twice as strong as you are, I promise. They're like, oh, whatever. And I was like, look what he did to me on accident. Like, not even on purpose. So, yeah, it takes just one or two of those events for people to realize, it's maybe worth the extra couple $100 just to have someone do this for me.
Yeah, back in 2003 when we were prepping all those animals for that landowner for the YO, they would just open the gate a little bit, and there was like 4 of us in line. There was who knows what was in there, a buck and does. In this case, there was a big, 20-inch black buck and then a bunch of does. And we didn't know. They didn't give us safety briefing or whatever, and they just said just shoot in there in a line and then flank them all and start grabbing them. That's what they told us. Well, I was the first one, and I was all in shape, playing basketball and working out and everything. And I slid in there, and that 2 horns hit me right here. And I just grabbed them, and they pushed me in and shut the door. And I was just in there. And this little, 80, 90-pound, 100-pound black buck male I was sucked to his horns, and the does were just running circles everywhere. And I was yelling at them to get in there and help me. And it was just throwing me around like a little rag doll. And I was prime in shape, heavy. Yeah. And he shouldn't have been doing that. So don't underestimate those small animals.
Absolutely.
They can definitely do some damage.
Yeah. I think that's when most people, and I think hearing different vets and things that we've had on, is their number one priority is the human safety than the animal safety. But the reason humans are number one, not only value of life, but 2, is because those animals will mess you up.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the biggest time people get hurt is when they underestimate whatever they're working on.
Sure.
But with that to be said, is when you show up to a ranch, what are some of the first things that you're looking for at that specific ranch before you decide what to do?
Sure. Size of the ranch is a big factor. The smaller the place, typically the more gentle the animals are, and you can regulate the feed better and get them, caught into a trap easier. What species they're looking to catch, and what species are out there we're not catching. Because like some whitetail operations don't want to cut feed, or maybe it's a fallow operation. They don't want to turn their feeders off in the growing season because they want them to have, maximum opportunity to eat all that. And so, but it's a baited situation in a trap. They don't just like, oh, what's that black thing? I'm going to go walk over there and, go check it out. They know there's something good in there: corn, protein, molasses tubs, hay. So that's another factor to look at, is non-target species on the ranch, because if they won't turn those feeders off, there's no sense even setting a trap up, because they're not going to go into it. So, but then crunching all those numbers, how far away is the place to effectively, run that operation? But size of the place is probably the biggest factor in there, and how thick it is. So vegetation, brush cover. If you needed to fly with a helicopter, but you can't shoot a net out of there or get a dart because it's so thick, then that's going to affect what you do and how you work that. So those are the main things that we would need to look at before either starting a job or recommending. I even ask people, what are you trapping? If they say, hey, I want this trap. So well, what are you trapping? Maybe I've experienced it or heard from somebody, what works best, or you maybe only need 2 gates. And so buy 2 gates and put more of that money into a nicer alleyway that's safer for those super exotics. Then, you don't need 10 gates, because those supers will walk in 2 gates or whatever that may be. So I don't have a list of going down, but just kind of get a general feel for what's there and what the place looks like, and kind of go from there.
Yeah. And I know we've talked about it in the past, doing like whether it's working on your brochure or updating your website or whatever it would be. But do you just have people look at stuff you put on social media and be like, hey, I want this set up, or I want this, but add this to it? Or how do people make purchases with you?
Since 1967, the Exotic Wildlife Association has supported conservation advocacy, and education for the exotic wildlife industry. EWA brings together ranchers, breeders, conservationists, hunters, and wildlife professionals who are working to protect the exotic wildlife and preserve the industry for the next generation. EWA members receive access to valuable resources, legislative support, networking, education, and of course, the EWA registry. Learn more or become a member today at myewa.org and follow the Exotic Wildlife Association on Facebook. Whitetail and fallow breeders. We know that as summer approaches, your animals are going to be growing out their antlers. So if you would like us at Droptine Studios to market them with photos or videos, make sure you visit our website, fill out the form, and reach out to us. And exotic breeders, we know that you have a lot of sales coming up in August as well. So if you want to start promoting yourself at a trade show or put anything in the auction catalog, make sure you give us a call and we can help you market your exotics as well.
Yeah, a lot of them will just send me a picture. So I try to post on, if I go set up a new trap somewhere, a different style or something, then I'll post it on Facebook just for publicity. And we have the general ones on the website, but I've had a lot of people I never had a phone call or anything. They shoot me a messenger and say, how much is this installed here? And then I will try to circle back around with them. I said, well, this is the price there. And did you need a drive-through gate so you can get in with your feed jet or your skid steer? Or are you down by the coast? Do you want it galvanized? Oh, you're catching kudu. Well, you need it 10 foot tall because they're going to jump over this 8 foot because I've watched them do that. So there's a back and forth. And some people don't already know. And so I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Right.
Here's the price. And you can pick it up in Utopia or we'll come give you a quote to deliver and install it. But yeah, a lot of them just take a picture and shoot it. That's why we're at Droptine, getting better photos, putting more stuff on the website so people see different models. Because you could put 4, and I think somebody's done this. It put 3 panels in a gate, so it's a 12 by 12 box. I don't know what you're going to catch in that, but you could technically put it however you wanted, square, rectangular. As big as you wanted it, you just may not be able to get the animals out into an alleyway if you get it too big. So sky's the limit on what. So it's just putting something in front of them so they can have ideas.
Yeah.
So
I think too, which we'll talk about at lunch after this, but I think it would be very beneficial for you to give them some names called this one, the Sendero, and this one, the Tejas or whatever. So people just click and order them. But you also make custom ones. And so how you said, you can just configure it however, but with Carlton at Kaiser Creek, they built a whole arena.
Monster.
Yeah.
I have to call that Mac Daddy or something.
Right.
I'm not sure.
So I guess just on brief points, they obviously had some kind of goal or thought behind it. And then can you talk about that and then how you went about constructing it? Sure. With them?
Yeah. So, actually I'm working with a guy right now that needs a little custom working facility. So it's going to come out of so we're just drawing crudely on paper and getting videos of it and then putting it on graph paper, getting it to make sure it will work for them. But at Kaiser Creek, they had a drawing of it. And so they were trying to capture basically a trap in 4 multi-pins, basically. So they had a central location with a trap and gates going to each, I think it was 4 pastures. So then they had an alleyway, but the alleyway wasn't just a regular alleyway. It was almost a alley/holding facility. So they had custom measurements on there and custom width sliders. We had to make 8-foot sliders, which that means the whole thing's 16 foot and is super heavy. And we had to reinforce this and make sure this was going to work. And so basically they had that all drawn out. So we kind of went back and I looked to make sure it was going to all work correctly, or we could build it, or what did we have to change? And it was 10 foot tall. So if they're going to run kudu through it, most likely they're not going to jump out of it, and that keeps them all in there. And then how are we going to secure it to the ground? 10 foot tall, skinny alleyway is pretty flimsy. There's no side supports in it. So we went back and forth a bunch with the owner, with the managers. There was a biologist involved in there and made sure it was all going to spec out to how they wanted it, and then built it and took it up in 2 stages and installed it. And it's the monster. It's for sure the longest one we've ever set up. So There's one down south that might be bigger square footage, but that probably tops them all.
Man.
So it was.
So if anyone's wanting a custom one, just call Joseph and he'll help you build your dreams.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that we have some guys that started in this industry, and he wanted certain depth and length on the sorting stalls for something specific. So I just said, sure, we can make it however you want. He wanted a man door in a certain spot and this door to go out, not in, or whatever. So, I mean, we do build these from scratch. So yes, pretty much anything you could dream up and put on paper, then we could make it.
And then since you've had your cameras integrated into all of your traps, what has that taught you over the past 20, 25 years of like animals, like being able to pattern them or whatever that would be? What has that taught you being able to have those interactive cameras?
Mm-hmm. It's kind of interesting. It depends on what you're trapping. So but back in the day when we were doing tons of free range axis, and we still have free range axis traps, right before a full moon, they would all hit the trap at the same time. It was weird. I don't know if it was a day or two or whatever. And we didn't write down the barometric pressure and what was going on that day, but going off of moon phase, we always caught something right before a full moon. But then we tried to not trap on a full moon, or if we did, they bled more, which is an old in the old Farmer's Almanac, basically. They didn't cut horns or dock tails on a full moon because they bleed too much. So, so be cautious of that, but they're always insane. And if you were using medicine to, knock them down, you always had to use more on a full moon.
Right.
So, but there's a lot of animals that won't come in the daylight at all, but they'll come after dark. So it's interesting because those cameras have, IR lights on them. You can see what they're doing at night and when they're patterning and what time does that feeder need to go off. You can look back through our camera roll and say, oh, they show up at about midnight. So maybe have a feeding right before midnight or whatever and see if we can get them caught that way. But that'd be the main thing is animals are a little bit more inviting to go in at dark or after dark, basically. So we have caught quite a few animals after dark.
Yeah. So. One of the things that I guess this will be my clickbait for everyone listening, but if all the rules and regulations with drugs that people are using, and if they're limited to what drugs they can or cannot use, whether the landowners or trappers, how will your traps help people if the rules are just cut off to where you can't use drugs anymore?
Yeah, that's going to be a sad time when that happens. But the triple slider double release alleyway would be effective at slowing those animals down and sorting them when they come into the alleyway. So you could, of course, do that on the trailer, but you would have two other little 4x12 holding boxes to sort those animals before they got on the trailer. So if it was me, it depends on how many animals you need to sort, if they're hard antlered or what's going on and how quickly you need to do that. But I have had guys make longer alleyways, so therefore they had multiple boxes and chances to slow those animals down, have made them shorter. So instead of 12 foot between sliders, it's 6 foot. And so they can capture one animal in there real quick and easy. And so I would see, and that's already been a thing, like guys have bought just the alleyways, so sliders and release panels or slotted panels or whatever they want to put on their older traps because they can't get meds or they're not able to get meds at all, or they just wanted to have the option to do that. So the traps, I mean, if you're either, I mean, even with a helicopter, you can drop a net on them, but if you can't get the drugs, you can't dart them, or it's going to be where the vet is there on site with the helicopter and you're darting the animals with his drugs. But the common person out there that's, running his little operation, you're going to rely on working them at night so they're a little more docile and having an alleyway where you can cut them or having a long trailer and people that know what they're doing on the trailer to separate those animals. So that would come into play for sure.
Have you configured any white or red lights how you do in the trailers? Can you add those onto your traps? So if you're working at night?
Normally what I do is I just have the magnetic ones. So I just, have them in the truck, keep them charged, and then just stick them on the alleyway. So it does make a big difference to light up the alleyway a little bit. because then they'll peek around that wing and see that it's, daylight in there basically. And then they go and you can shut the slider and now they're locked. So,
Right.
I haven't rigged up like a actual system because they're never just one more thing to mess with,
Yeah.
So it's just easy to stick a magnet light on there and then turn it on off.
Absolutely. But this is me saying this right now to anyone listening. I think that, so Joseph, go ahead and start building more traps. Hopefully people start buying more. But if the rules and regulations go any worse than they are currently, which I think it's inevitable, you're going to need a trap. You're going to need the trap that he just mentioned that has the sliders, that has the other ones, the sorting stalls, everything else, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to effectively work animals out in the pasture, even in pens, if you cannot sedate your animals.
Sure.
So use Droptine 10 to get 10% off. No, I'm just kidding.
I thought it was 5.
Right. But no, that code is not real. But yeah, I mean, anyone that's listening, I would say buy them now, because I think when that actually goes into place, I mean, I think it's going to be harder and harder for you to get traps just because there's not going to be any other options.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's probably coming to some extent for sure.
Yeah.
And you're going to be relying on, like I said, the chopper or the vet to do ground darting, which there's not that many in our industry that can do service. There's no
Right.
way in the world that all those vets could go out and service all the needs of the exotic industry. So,
Oh, yeah.
you're going to be live loading animals and need to sort them and cut them. And, it works extremely well, but I'm sure we're going to come up with something else, maybe that makes it a little bit quicker or easier. In that case, basically.
Right. And I think we've talked about this before, and this isn't on any of my questions, but like when you said that you've used, or if I recall right, you've used some of these for like even working pens for like deer and pens, like say whitetail, but they don't have a working facility. Like, so they didn't build out. Have you helped configure any of those as like a portable working facility? Because that could be another huge thing that I know we've talked about in the past.
Yeah. Most of the ones we've done were holding facilities, but we have done it to where there was a 4-foot alleyway that went around, and it was actually pretty cool. There was a 4-way split. So they had animals coming from their pens down a V, and then they went to a 4-foot alleyway with sliders so they could not backtrack towards the pens. Then they could shoot them down in a hallway to 8 holding pens. They were like 12 by 12, basically. Or they could shoot them down that same hallway, but straight to a trailer. Or they could shoot them past that hallway and turn back around and went into a drop floor cradle. And so they could tag, worm, I guess if they were in a cedar operation with AI, they could do that.
Right.
And then from there, they either could go to a holding pen, back to the pens, or to a trailer. So yes, we didn't build the cradle, but we did build everything else to that. Yeah. And so we met with him half a dozen times and kept drawing on paper to get it. How many holding pins you need? How long does this need to be, to get it all done? And they send me videos all the time of working animals through there. Not every animal, but, all their fallow and some of the sheep and all that kind of stuff.
When I think that, mentioning a fallow, I think that would do really well for these fallow breeders that are getting into it, is because, I mean, let's say semen cells. Most people think that you have to have a deer breeding facility, which could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to build, which it is nice to have, but it's not needed for AI. I mean, you could just knock them down in the pens in AI, and your success might be not great, but
sure,
success rate is still 40 to 70% in fallow. So but I do think that would be a good option for these like newer fallow breeders that are just like, I can buy this portable unit to be able to work like a handling facility for my animals.
Sure.
Without having to spend $100,000, $200,000 on a building.
Yeah.
So,
we've looked at building some and renting them, around that time period. But then it gets into a logistical nightmare because you have, 20, 30 people that need these, and to effectively get them all worked and a timeline to tear them all down and get them moved to the other one, or just to have that many out, and we've stayed busy building our normal bread and butter things. And so, but yeah, we could definitely, as simple or as elaborate as you would need something to work animals, we could definitely help you do that and not spend $100,000 on a full facility.
Right.
So what if you sell a property and then you can tear that
you
down?
could tear that down and take it with you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a portable asset.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if you're listening to this, I would say reach out to Joseph or comment below or whatever it is. But like, if that's something that you're interested in of renting one, based on that's the biggest thing, right? Is demand. Because if you had one that you build but 30 people want it, then it's rendered useless.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you have 40 people, it's like I would do one next breeding season,
mm-hmm.
and then it may be worth talking about,
exploring for sure.
But when you're making traps for exotic specifically, what are some of those? I know you talked about like the pins and latches and things. Is there anything else that stands out to you over the past 20 something years? It's like, man, this is why, boast you since you're here, but is this why EGC's traps are better than other alternatives?
There's a few things that I can think of, in my opinion. Because we did high-end custom homes, we didn't cut corners on stuff. We weren't doing, cookie cutter houses. And so we used good quality materials in those houses. And same when we were doing prefab metal buildings. And so when I started, I had to see something. Everyone has to start somewhere. So yes, we wired with tie wire the first panels together. There was no drop pins or anything pinned together. So, and it blow apart and, only lasted so long. So we did several different test, traps and ended up using boat cleats and triple braided mule tape. So readily available, easy to make. And boat cleats have been around for, ever basically. And then it gave us flexibility to, the panels weren't completely like perfect on level ground, which they never are going to be, to where your drop pins had to be too sloppy or, something of that to make it all work. And so we use boat cleats on the top and the bottom, and it goes around the T-post on the bottom. So that keeps it from the wind from moving it. And then we eventually pinned the top. So we leave the corners of the square of the panels open. So you can double pin it basically. And then it's an extension 2 foot up with a hook on it. So you could take an 8-foot trap, hang cattle panel on it, tie it all to the top, and make a 10-foot trap without having to cart around 10-foot tall panels. A lot of guys do that on the axis on free range jobs. So, and I do myself, and it works really well. But securing the trap so that it's not going to come apart when you have animals in it is very critical. And so also the joints at the top, they some of them aren't pinned at the top, so they flex. And I've seen animals get hooves caught in there. So they're literally dangling from their foot at the top of a panel. And so where we pin them, we basically pin them in 3 spots. So the joint is super strong. And then we do 2 horizontal supports on all the panels, because at 4 foot, when an animal is going to rub on the side, like GIMS, Oryx really push in a group, they just push on the wall. Where our bar is more where an animal pushes or hits. And so that's why instead of just 1 in the center, I put 2 on the side,
right,
just to beef it up a little bit. So I'm kind of like, I want them to get a good solid quality trap that is stout, and I don't have to get calls that this animal broke through or this broke. Now stuff's going to break, but I'd like the buy one, cry once type thing. Yes, they're a little more expensive, but it's a good heavy duty, solid panel and trap system that I field tested. Been trapping them since whenever I built my first one, and or before that, we were still, I was helping him build some traps, and so all that has come together. If I saw it in the field and I was like, this is so okay, let's change this and beef it up, then we changed it and beefed it up on our design, which then everyone gets the benefit of that.
Right.
So.
And that kind of goes into my next one. I think you answered it, but is when people are buying a trap, besides price, what should they be looking for?
I mean, a lot of guys just want the basic system. So they're just trying to get something to trap animals in and get them into a trailer. But I always ask them all the questions, what animals are you going to be trapping? If you can get a slider for safety and that type of stuff. But some people are just limited on, they just want the entry-level system. It's cool because you can add on to it. So basically, you can get the simple one, and you could have a triple slider, 4-gate. You can't make it 10-foot tall after that, except with the extensions, but they are adaptable for anybody's needs. So
So tying into the trailer part of everything, what are some of the biggest differences in exotic trailers versus the trailers that are just used for like livestock and other things that people are hauling?
Yeah, they need to have high sides on them, basically to limit the openness feel of the trailer. Like livestock, they're wanting maximum airflow on the animals, where we have to deal with high sides, little bitty windows up top, and get our airflow from like pop-up roof vents. Smaller dimensions in the trailer, like smaller stalls, individual stalls, and that type of thing. But then also some animals you can haul all together. So the trailer has to be super versatile. Go from a 40-inch by 48-inch buck stall to a 6'8" by 48-inch stall, or you can start folding the bifolds up and make an 8-foot, 12-foot, 16-foot, whatever size you need to haul those animals. So
right.
Big differences in between those two.
And then specifically when you were working with Big Bend on this, what are some features that you wanted in your trailers that like maybe some of the other, I don't want to say specific names, but like some of the other game trailers that people were using either lacked on, or they had a feature that was almost there but could have been worked better? Like what other features do your trailers have that just make it a standout trailer?
Yeah. The overall strength of hinges between the interior gates, the escape gates, and the hinges on the blackout windows that make it blacked out. They would seize up. They weren't greasable. So all the hinges on the Big Bends, we made them all greasable. So you don't have to worry about, WD-40 in your whole entire down your trailer to try to get the blackout windows to work.
Right.
That was one of the big things on it. Some of the butterfly vents and animals would kick out the whole vent in other trailers. So in this one, instead of cutting a hole and then putting the vent on it and putting mesh on it, we just slotted it so that if an animal does kick it, it's going to bend that slot that's in the whole piece of the side metal and it not just bust a hole out.
Right.
So it just bends it a little bit. So that there's still things that need to be improved that I'm getting fed by my guys, the ones that really abuse them or run tons of volumes of animals through. They're still feeding me some things, so we're still making some adjustments, and plus that I see in them. But the main thing is just when you shut that door, it's going to stay shut, and you don't have to worry about it coming open. And that's what a lot of people are really wanting to ensure.
Right.
Some people are putting cameras in their trailers and temperature gauges, and doing all that kind of stuff, but AC units and all that. But they just want to know when you shut that door, that animal's staying in that cut till you get there to go unload them.
Right.
A big thing.
Absolutely. Well, even when you're hauling it, like a lot of the whitetail trailers, they have AC units that you can add on, or they have other implements to cool it off. Can you kind of talk about the UV roof coating that y'all put on your trailers?
Yeah. So I bought a trailer with that on it a long time ago from another dealer before I really, did my own EGC trailers deal. And it made 40 to 50 degrees cooler to the touch on the inside. So I didn't really like the spray foam on the inside. It was kind of ugly, kind of messy. And, it's a lot of people like it, but I didn't like it. And I couldn't sell it as an add-on to my trailer. So we prep the roof and do all the certain, protocol to the roof and the material. And then we roll it on, and it is white, but it has a UV protectant in there, basically that is way cooler. Like you can walk on it barefoot in the summertime. And so it makes a drastic improvement overall for the overall coolness of the trailer. So to me in Texas, and we've even shipped trailers up north and they wanted it on there. So it makes a huge difference to have some kind of insulation.
Oh, for sure. Well, I can't stress to you enough, like even when we're on a film job and they have, which again, a trailer's a trailer. If your only goal is to just get animals point to B with, I know aesthetics don't have to matter, but man, there's some trailers I don't want to film in because I'm like, oh, I see you did the insulation yourself. And it's like falling down and they're using it as bedding and stuff.
Yeah. Animals chewing on it or whatever.
Right.
Some people like it because it does cushion, like if an animal jumps, like their tips kind of cushion in that. So, everybody has their own deal. I'm not going to say that can't do that.
Right.
That's just what I can do on my shop and sell it. And it, looks nice.
Yeah. And then same thing, kind of since we're covering multiple industries that you're in, is what are some common misconceptions people have two sides. I'm going to ask you on this side. One, with buying, manufacturing, and distributing trailers. And then two, what are common misconceptions they have with trailers in general for exotics?
Well, to my knowledge, Big Ben Trailers and I would be the newest addition to the exotic trailers, being produced. Sundowner made trailers and aluminum ones and everything like that. I'm sure there's somebody else that makes them. There's a lot of guys that rig out, and I may not answer your question exactly on this rant, but there's a lot of guys that take a stock trailer that's affordable and convert it to bifold gates or with buck dividers and all that stuff, either plastic or metal, and they work just fine, and that's what their budget and that's what that ranch is willing to spend on it, because they are expensive. So if you're not catching that many animals, then why go buy a $30,000-$40,000 fancy trailer that has all the bells and whistles and is going to last you a lifetime? So there's a lot of people that also skimp on say not metal dividers inside on the gates. They do put the plastic on there. They put too thin of plastic. Well, then they're behind it when an animal comes in and they get hooked, because their animal's just thrashed around in there and mad. And so safety, is a big thing to think about in that. But there are a lot of guys that rig out stock trailers, livestock trailers, and they work just fine.
Yep.
So.
And then what about the manufacturing side? Like, most people think that you just get trailers, sell trailers, make a ton of money. There's no paperwork, there's no meetings, there's no anything about that. So like, what all goes into it, or what misconceptions do people have as far as you being a dealer, distributor, and helping come up with the game plans?
Yeah. Well, it's besides this broke on this trailer, just normal things are going to happen on your truck that you buy, so you have to deal with all that type of stuff. Yes, there's registration. There's people that lose certain things, or, they lost their license plate. They need to go get another one. Or, an axle had a problem with it. Well, let me go back and get them connected to the axle manufacturer, so there's a lot of those things. But then initially, of course, that's why I went with Big Ben because their trailers had a good reputation of being manufactured correctly.
Right.
Still going to have little issues here and there and all that kind of stuff. But for someone that wanted to be, I'm going to go make the best game trailer out there, hats off to you. Go for it. That's all I can tell you. Because if it was so easy and so gravy, then I could have retired from all the other stuff and just sold trailers. But the amount of time I spent and some of my guys and other people with me to perfect this or change them than when they came from the factory, because they're made in Mexico,
right.
And they come over here. Well, I can't send them back. So I'm modifying them here, but there's a lot of effort put into on those initial, 10 to get them to where we need them to be.
Right.
And we're still changing them. So there's a lot of things. And I would never want to run the manufacturing side of it, like you're kind of saying, being a dealer.
I can't imagine.
Oh no, it's insane. And I've seen the plant in Mexico. It's super impressive, biggest thing that a lot of guys that have been in the industry for a super long time is they say, man, they can really weld. The weld quality on those trailers is very impressive. So makes a big difference. That's what's holding the whole thing together.
Right. Well, I was going to say, it's not your range hand doing it, making your own. So it's a professional that they have that only does welding on trailers. So
sure.
It makes a big difference.
It does.
So going into WH Exotics, a lot of people may not know, but what all different points are there with WH Exotics?
So after 23, we do have that 300 acres high fence, which we started breeding Dama, Blesbach, Impala, Springbok. Of course, I've always had the Trans-Caspians and the Uriols, but now I can grow out the males for a couple more years. I don't have to sell them as, say, 2-year-olds or whatever, that limiting me in that. A few axis in there, which we're trying to get rid of because they're fighting through the fence with the native axis in our area. Fallow, and then I don't have any plans to add anything else yet, just increasing those herds and getting them up to where we want them to be. So we do breed animals, and then I sell those, be like a little retirement package if everything goes well. And But then we also, if you had your high fence ranch and you didn't want to buy a trap or a trailer or mess with it, we will bring our traps and equipment out and then, go through a management plan. What do you want to catch? How many, and figure all that out, figure out all the little bid for you, and then trap the animals, get them to a sale, get them to a new buyer, and then pay you for those animals.
Right.
So that's what WH is mainly doing. And actually that's all I was supposed to be doing in this side venture. And it's ended up being selling the traps and the cameras takes the majority of my time. So,
right.
Kind of interesting how that just works out,
Well, I think that's a thing we talk about often is in our industry. One of the biggest things is you can't just do this in your hypothetical backyard. You can't go to someone's ranch and transport animals just by driving to the house. You got to drive 2-3 hours or wherever the ranch is located based off where you're located. Same thing with our jobs. I wish we could take pictures from our couch and then be home at night and do whatever, but that's part of this industry that people don't really know or recognize enough, but they're on the road a lot.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You're catching those animals in, just say Menard, and you're driving all the way to the valley to go drop them off. I mean,
right.
There's guys that I talk to that, they do put 150,000 miles on their trucks every year, hauling animals.
Yeah.
So, for sure.
Yeah. Luckily, the more we've grown, our mileage per vehicle goes down. But granted, it's still up there when you combine all 3 of our work vehicles or 4 vehicles, whatever it is. But yeah, with that, I mean, we've talked about exotic game control, EDC trailers, and then WH Exotics. As far as business wise, through all the 20 some odd years, what are some of the hardest parts that you've learned business wise, growing and managing all 3 of your companies?
For nearly 60 years, the Exotic Wildlife Association has united ranchers, breeders, conservationists, and the wildlife professionals committed to protecting exotic wildlife and preserving the exotic wildlife industry. EWA membership gives you a strong voice in legislative advocacy, valuable industry connections, educational resources, and access to programs that support wildlife conservation and responsible stewardship. Join a community dedicated to the future of the exotic wildlife. Learn more and become a member today at myewa.org. Spring Creek Outdoors is an all-inclusive habitat and wildlife management company that includes exotic and native animals, fisheries, lake designs, construction, wildlife surveys, including helicopters and thermal drones, wildlife captures, state-issued permits, and wildlife tax conversions all over Texas. They have seen what works and what doesn't work on hundreds of ranches and literally millions of acres. No matter what your management goals are, the team at Spring Creek Outdoors can help you reach them. So find more information at springcreekoutdoors.com.
Exotic game control would be the most pain in the butt because when we did our cameras, we had a lot of back end stuff. Besides finding a guy to build the app, we pay other companies for hosting services and to do cloud things and to make the app send push notifications. There's several very in-depth things that go on the back end, and keeping all that running. We've only had twice. The whole thing just went kaput for about 6 hours till somebody got something figured out. It was really the company. It wasn't my deal. It was their servers went down or something. So, knock on wood, the current one is the biggest one, and so that's pretty good. But trying to make everything work initially, when I just had a few cameras and I was charging monthly for them, I was losing money every month with what their usage was, because it's pay per use pretty much on that plan.
Right.
So I was like, oh, this is great. Let's start a camera company, and I'm losing money every month doing this. And until you get to a certain tier, and they give you a little bit better of a break, So, and to make everything work, we went through several servers on the back end to get the motion alerts working. And then I had to buy my own custom APN through AT&T to get all the SIM cards because I hit a limit there. So it's like, and then, we just switched this camera. So like the amount of frustration and stress that caused, now it's good. It's been working. I still have number 1 and number 3 at my place working. So, I mean, I have guys that don't ever call me for 3 or 4 years. They're like, hey, the camera's not working. I can bring it in, and then we do a repair on it and send it out, and it's still working, And so that was pretty frustrating to get that kind of going smoothly. But everything else, the trailers, had some difficulty there initially before we got it where we wanted it. And WH was just learning from, hopefully not your mistake, but each time you went and loaded animals or did this, and you just keep that in your memory bank. So, but now it's all running smoothly, hopefully, and coasting a little bit.
Well, that's what, some people ask us as far as like, well, why should we hire you if you work with so many ranches? And it's like, because I've got the database inside my head of what to do and what not to do, more importantly. It's like, hey, that idea you had is great. Wasn't the first time someone's had it. Here's why it didn't work. So, yeah, I think it's really interesting, and why I like asking the business question is I think most people, as you said, was like, this started as a hobby. I never intended to run a business, and running the business was the hard part out of building traps, building trailers, having all these ideas is what gets us to that point. But actually trying to go through and run the business side kind of sucks.
Yeah, exactly. Delegating authority to someone else down the chain and trusting them to do it correctly is, it's hard.
Right. So with one of the closing things that I have here is, for someone getting started in exotics, what advice would you give them before they start spending money on animals, traps, trailers, or any equipment?
Yeah, they need to get a little experience. So, that would be ranch tours where they offered it. See what animals they have in pastures together. How big of pastures are those people running? You're running pens, you're running, or you got one place that's 100 acres and you don't have to worry about it. Go into the auctions and you'll talk to people, and most everybody in our industry is, pretty personable and will educate you to some degree. And so kind of getting that good game plan, or, you could just buy ranch and start, buy every animal on an auction off there. But if you don't have that goal of, are we going, genetics, or we just want to make babies, or what's the goal? You want some tax write-off, or having that plan down will definitely help you in the future. Because I have come on to places where they're like, we don't know how many deer we have, and it's an insane amount, and I said, well, there's a lot because you don't have any grass, and the browse line's up 3 or 4 foot. So yeah, let's start helping you manage this problem and get it under control, so your habitat's good for everything. So there's a lot. There's actually a lot to be learned, unless you're the owner and you hire a manager, and he's supposed to know all that. But there's a lot of stuff that goes into the whole operation side of exotics.
Right.
It's pretty simple though. You get some, you feed them, and they have water. They should do okay for a short period of time.
Yeah, it's the 5 to 10% of when things go wrong that you're like, might need a professional for this.
Yeah, exactly. Don't go haul off and buy some giraffe at an auction and don't have a barn or a vet on on rotation and all that kind of stuff. But
yeah, the way I've heard it is their most expensive ranch is your first ranch, because you're figuring out how to run a ranch on your first one.
And I have lots of guys that call me and they say, hey, I don't really need a trap right now, but this is what I'm looking at, because they either need to get some animals off that place or they want to introduce some more. And so, I'll just have a conversation with them and kind of educate them a little bit, not, crazy everything. This is the size of kind of salt block you need or whatever, but all those things do factor into it for sure.
Right.
So,
well, one of the things that you don't even know about yet, because I think it just released on our first one, is we started asking each guest, without knowing who the next guest is coming, what question would you like to ask the next guest? So far it's been a plethora of business, about exotics, about whatever. But the last question that was asked to you was, who is Austin Praden's doppelganger?
Oh my gosh, your doppelganger. Now you're going to make me nervous.
So since that one wasn't as serious and we're trying to be more educational, and you can leave this in, Daniel, I don't care if that was from Nash, is who that was from.
Oh, I gotcha.
But yeah, so you don't have to answer that one. But if you were to leave a question for the next guest, what would you want that question to be?
Do I want to be sappy or sentimental. So the question I would ask the next person is,
well, Joseph, thank you for coming on and kind of giving us a history of your companies and everywhere you've been and how you got to where you're at. And I'm hoping that our viewers, our listeners, were able to hopefully learn something. And so if they wanted to say, hey, I want to build my own trap, or I want a trap in general, or a trailer, or I want help with my exotics, whatever it would be that you can help them with, where can they find you, or how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, everything's on the website, but then also on Facebook. We have a Facebook page for every single one with my number linked on to it. And so that's the easiest way. Just get my phone number and call me or text me, and I'll get back with you as soon as I can.
Perfect. Well, Joseph, thank you for coming in. We appreciate your time, and I guess we'll go talk about your other projects that we need to work on now.
Thanks for having me on, Austin.
Thanks, sir.